over the course of the latter half of the 20th century, with the first Gulf War, right at the end, 1991, Desert Storm, they started with pool journalists, right?
Okay, that's what it was.
And then after 9/11, they embedded the journalists with the troops. And what that did was two things. If you're embedded with American troops, you can't go and you're not going to tell the side of the story. In fact, in my book, A Century of Media, A Century of War, which looked at the entire century, I have a quote from somebody who was working for Fox News, and I asked her, she was in a boat in Kuwait waiting to go in and embed with the journalist, with the troops. And I said, if you see a fighter, or if you see a shot civilian, are you going to report that? And she said, our job is to tell the U.S. military's side of the story. That's a quote. And that's what they did. They told the U.S. And they treated it like, news is a constructed story. It's part of our culture. There are many similarities between narratives. They're all based in narratives, and their cultural narratives, and their work for entertainment, and they work for television, and they work for films, and they're very similar narratives. And so what the invasion of Iraq used were the reality show. It was the reality show format. They were looking over the soldiers' shoulders, and they were saying, "Ooh, look at there, look at that. We're here, we're up, we're with them. How are you feeling, guys?" It was
reality TV,
reality show, and then they actually established battlefield propaganda. They did propaganda in the field. Do you remember Saving Private Ryan, the movie? Well, there was Saving Private Lynch, the reality, which of course was not a reality. Private Lynch was a kindergarten teacher. Went back. She was with a battalion. She was with a supply battalion, and I think they hit an IDF, and they hit an explosive, and they blew up, and she was injured. She was at the hospital being cared for by Iraqi doctors. They tried the day before to deliver that young woman to a checkpoint and give her back to the Americans. They wouldn't take her. They came in and they did this extraction of this woman, endangering the lives of everyone in that hospital and the doctors that were caring for her, and took her out. And it was like No Man Left Behind. It was all of these movie things come together. And so the way 9/11 was different from now was that we weren't there, right? And for a long time, we haven't been there. We haven't been on the field of battle since Vietnam. And when we were there, it was very encapsulated and contained with these narratives. But what happened in Gaza is that we saw it on our handheld devices every day, and I think that's what that changed us. That changed us. They turned 9/11 and all of the invasions and the war on terror into various Hollywood gaming. They became first-person shooter games. They were blockbuster films. The connection between Hollywood and the Pentagon over the years developed more and more. And so for a long time, we've been thinking, wow, it's it's fun and exciting to do war, and it's all about valor and victory. And once we saw the images from Gaza, I think we finally understood that war is about death. It's about destruction. It's about horror, and
profit.
And profit. That's right.
If there is something positive in all of this nonsense, which it's hard to find, we know that. There was a story that happened earlier today in your neck of the woods. It's actually pretty funny, but it's also a reflection in a lot of ways of how New Yorkers are in general. A lady decided that she was going to cause a big scene in Midtown Manhattan, and this is what ended up unfolding. again. Watch the.
Call the police. Call the police. Somebody call the police. Did you pay your fare? Did you pay your fare?
No, he took a ride around the whole city and is double charged me. Now I'm just in my bus.
Then you gotta pay your fare.
I see you, my boyfriend. You gotta pay your fare.
You gotta pay your fare, miss.
You gotta pay your fare.
You gotta pay your fare. You gotta pay your fare.
You gotta pay your fare. The whole city without using a GPS. I'm calling the fucking company. That's okay. I gotta pay your fare.
You know what I love about this is they're all saying, you got to pay your fare, lady. I'm going to call the police. Why? Because you saw a Palestinian flag on an immigrant's car. Turns out this woman is Israeli. And
Of course she is.
You know,
Of course she
and
is.
this is the type of thing where they don't know any other way. They can't learn a new method. They only have this. And once they have completely worn out their welcome, which clearly they have, which is why all of these men are standing around watching this woman screaming her head off like this man's attacking her, when in reality, what he was doing was not letting her get her bag. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, do you know why why the man wasn't letting her have her bag? Because she tried to skip out on the bill because she saw the Palestinian flag.
You know, there are very good things. There are, I think it's amazing that the American public, you know, Abraham Lincoln said, you know, if you tell the Americans the truth, they'll do the right thing. And I really think that's true. We saw what was happening in Gaza, and we believed it because you can see a difference of on the ground authentic reporting and documentation, and you can tell it from these constructed Israeli justifying talking points that are just ridiculous. But we didn't fall for it. We've been gaslighted. If you think about it, we've been gaslighted since October 7th. Oh, it was such a surprise. We did nothing. No, it wasn't a surprise. you killed 10,000 Palestinians from about 2001 to about 2022, and 10,000 people were killed in the Israeli Palestinian conflict. 9 out of 10 of them were Palestinian. So all we have to do is look at those numbers, right? But we didn't fall for it. We were on a very steep learning curve. We saw the film Israelism right off the bat, you know, and I think as a public, we began to see the absolute bravery of Palestinians under fire. The New York Times is calling them lawless and blaming them for their own starvation. We could see them banding together, sharing food, helping one another, helping each other pull the children out of the rubble, feeding the cats. We saw the humanity there. And I think it's been an incredible learning curve, but we relied on our own humanistic morals. And we have roundly rejected that. And they're, as we talked about before, they're lobbying. They can keep spending the money, but it's not going to work.